Welcome, friends. Hey, we're going to lay down a little history today. We're walking along, heading towards the Yakima River, thinking back to 1805. Yeah, that's right. We're going to do a little history today. We got a dog day going on. Dogs get a walk and sniff, do whatever they want. I don't have a camera. Doesn't mean we can't learn some history, though, right? So we got 1805, and about 3 miles south, just about 3 miles, is the Snake River. Snake River is what the Lewis and Clark expedition team came down when they met the Columbia River, met with the local tribes. There was no wood here, no trees, just sagebrush and willows. The trees are something that happened later when they started damming the rivers. So the people were living in this type of landscape. They had sagebrush, and they had prickly pears, and we still have both those today. I'm not exactly sure what prickly pears are, but we got some stuff that classifies. So there they were, the whole expedition camped downriver. And Clark and a few others decide to do a trip upriver to a river that they heard of that came from the west. So in 1805, William Clark grabbed a canoe and a couple of co-explorers. They headed up the Columbia River. They were going to see if they could find the confluence of another river that came up and met with the Columbia. It's called the Yakima River, or as the natives called it, Tapteel. Welcome to Tapteel. As they paddled up the Yakima, they ran into some native peoples. They were called the Chamnapum, which were a branch of the Wamnapum, which were affiliated with the Nez Perce, the Yakima, and also the Umatilla. Chamnapum were river people. Wamnapum, they were river people. They dried a lot of salmon. According to the journals, they were drying tons of salmon on these banks of the Yakima, or the Tapteel. As they paddled up the river, there was a stranger on board, a stranger from a strange land, was with William Clark as they paddled up here, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. It's Black History Month. We're going to talk about York. York was William Clark's slave. He went on this journey. He landed on these shores. Let's find out about him. Thanks for coming. This stranger in a strange land had a dark complexion. He was a slave. He was William Clark's personal slave from childhood. They stopped here, both of them. And the thing is, York got out of that canoe a free man. He was doing the West. York was part of this crew. He wasn't shoveling shit. I mean, he might have been, but not any more than anyone else. And he walked on these shores in 1805, a free man. York was one generation away from his homeland. His parents were bought by William Clark's parents. York was born around the same time as William Clark. They grew up together. They played together. Now, they were clear out west, climbing out of a canoe in a strange land. Both of them were a long way from home. York carried a rifle. He was known to be a really good shot. I have no idea how he became a good shot, being a slave, but somewhere in the mix, oh, there's our trail over here. Come here, guys. Come on. Oh, we can make it through there. Come on, let's drop on down in the sand. Come on, let's go, Ben. We can do it. I got it. We're good. It's dry. Come on, let's go. Thank you for being concerned, though, buddy. Oops. There we are. York was a caretaker for everyone. He was a healer. He helped the sick. He helped the wounded. He helped people with fever. He stayed with people when they were sick. So I'm imagining that the Wanapum people thought about York the exact same way every other Native American tribe did when they saw him. They're awestruck by his color, by the pigment of his skin. They saw those darker tones as a sign of spirituality, as a sign of a warrior. They didn't see it as a fault. They saw it as a privilege. In fact, multiple stories of native tribes offering up their wife for a little powwow in the teepee. History's kind of loose on that. Nonetheless, he was applauded and he was recognized by these tribes. They rolled out the carpet for him, and that became an asset to the crew, especially when it came to native relations. You know, York opened up a lot of opportunities. There's a story the Mandan tribe have about a black man with Lewis and Clark, and the legend is how well he danced. It might sound racial when you first hear it, but you have to remember, campfire dancing was done by everybody. It wasn't just the Native Americans. The Lewis and Clark tribe, that was their way of unwinding, was dancing around the campfire at night, loosen up, get ready for bed, celebrate the day. That's what they did. So it's not unusual that he would be seen dancing, but it is noted that he was good at it, like he was a lot of things. So here you got a guy who went from being, one year he's a slave, and the next year he's a person of influence, both among his peers, the Lewis and Clark expedition, but also among the natives. He was given special privilege by the tribes, and they called him Big Medicine. So York was a diplomatic tool, it turns out, for the Lewis and Clark expedition. Broke the ice. He got them in the door. When the expedition would reach a pinnacle, they voted. Not that the captains couldn't do whatever they wanted, but they would take a vote amongst the expedition on taking a right or left, this river, over that mountain, up that dale. They'd talk about it, and each person would place a vote. York was allowed to vote, as he had a voice. You know, it would be a long time before people of his color would be allowed to vote or have a say in anything. But here York was, you know, being a part. He was a valued compadre. He was looked upon well. He was a hard worker. They all were. So, bottom line is, York, he earned himself some equality out here. He earned a lot of equality out here. He earned freedom out here. He was living it. The only life he knew was that of a slave. And all of a sudden, he was tasting freedom. He was tasting the wild. When the party was all over, they made their 8,000-mile trek, round-trip trek. Everyone got to come back as a hero, as a person of honor. They got to come back to good jobs, politics. They got to come back to a lot of things. York didn't come back to anything. York went from being an independent part of a team with a value amongst that team to being nobody, to being a slave again. It didn't last long, William Clark. It didn't last long, 3 or 4 years. And after that, in 1809, for the first time in their lives, Clark and York separated ways. It's not really known exactly what happened with York because there's a lot of tales, there's a lot of legends, and there's a lot of folklore. I do know the ending I like best, and that's the one I'm going to share with you, and it's not the one of Clark being the hero, it's the one of York being the hero, because He's our hero in this story. Let's go with that. None of this is fact, but it has as much merit as any of the other endings. So in 1832, this is documented, but how accurate it is unknown because it's a first-hand account, retelling from a first-hand account. I was a fur trader who ran into a black man, an older black man, amongst one of the native tribes. He was a part of them, and that's where he was living. And if you think about it, if you were him, and those were your choices, because slaves weren't going to get freed in his lifetime, but those were your choices, that's where I'd go. And I have to think that he might have found his way there. There is documented proof that in the 1800s, 1830s, 1840s, there were black mountain men, fur traders, because out here, it didn't matter as much. And I think that that's probably the decision that York made. I hope it is. That's my bit of history for today. And we're going to continue on our journey down the Yakima, just like York did on his way back to the Columbia. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this little story. Just something I've been learning about. Hey, thanks so much for joining me. And like and subscribe. May your journey be sweet, friends. Thanks for coming.